Ever feel like you're doing everything right but still running on empty? Like the habits that built your success are now burning you out. Welcome to Smart Driven Women. I'm Rona Job. Here, impactful leaders and entrepreneurs come to share how they navigate their complex careers and personal lives. Our guest today is Audrey Bansil. Audrey has spent over 20 years in advertising at NBCUniversal, building a career across operations, sales, planning, and organizational strategy. Today, she leads employee experience and talent development initiatives that support growth, culture, and how people truly thrive at work. Beyond her corporate career, Audrey is the current president of Phil Excellence, a global Filipino-focused organization centered on empowerment, community healing, and collective growth. As her term soon comes to an end, she continues to support the organization's mission while bringing this work to a broader audience. Drawing on both her professional and personal experience, Audrey designs transformational experiences that blend neuroscience, identity work, nervous system healing, and intuitive practices, supporting people in moving beyond survival mode and into lives and leadership that feel sustainable, authentic, and aligned. Audrey, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here finally.
I know, me too. Okay, I'm going to dive right into our very first question, which, as you probably know by now, we ask everybody. So, before you started your professional career journey, did you consider yourself driven? And when did that start?
I would say that I was driven, but the source of my drive has changed over time. As you know, I am the eldest daughter in an immigrant family. I moved to the U.S. from the Philippines when I was 8 years old. And I was actually an only child at that time. So I was the only daughter. My sibling and I are 9 years apart. So I feel like that itself answers the question. When did it start? From the beginning. Early on, I just remember the external pressure of, meeting expectations and proving that the sacrifice was worth it. But I've been thinking about your question because, I'm familiar with you asking it, but it's so hard to pinpoint when it started. I was like, did it start when I started school, when we moved, before that? And it's really kind of hard to pinpoint. I just remember the pressure early on, even in early school before we moved. My mom really cared about grades, even when I was really young, and how well I was doing. So I feel like that motivated me because early on, I had already recognized that maybe my worth was tied to excellence. I feel like you have a similar background as me.
Yeah,
Do you remember?
I was thinking about the same thing because you went to primary school in the Philippines, which I did too. And I remember in the Philippines, they would, even as early as kindergarten or even first grade, they would rank you from like 1 to 10 to like the very last, in the class in rankings. And I'm like, and as you're talking about this, I'm like, I also can't remember if the drive came from that. I don't remember if it came after like more responsibilities had set in as the eldest daughter, which really happened after we moved to the United States. So I don't know. I'm having a hard time pinpointing too.
Yeah. But I do remember that my drive was powered by that external pressure for a really long time. And I don't think I even recognized that that's what it was for a while, all throughout school. And it wasn't until much later, like in the last few years, that started to shift more towards being driven by purpose and impact. But for a long time, it was external pressure of meeting expectations.
Yeah. And I mean, that pressure too of make sure our sacrifice is worth it. That's a heavy, heavy pressure, more so than the ranking system that they have, in the Philippines and in school and stuff. Like there's a big shift in your life. And now it's like, no, we're doing this for you,
Yeah.
make it worth it.
And the school system that we had moved to when we moved to the US was a highly competitive school system with also a lot of immigrant families. So, as you can imagine, the energy in general growing up in that kind of system was really heightened when it comes to the pressure. And I remember a lot of comparison. I'm sure you're familiar with this too, but I would get like an A minus and it would be like, why did you get anything wrong at all? Why isn't it an A plus? So there was a lot of that growing up. Or even one of the stories I tell is I moved here in the third grade. So when I was 8 years old, and English was my third language. I spoke it at the time, but I had two native languages in the Philippines. Oh, you're familiar.
I am.
And I won the spelling bee that first year that I had moved here.
Now you're really on a driven high.
And I remember obviously what that felt like, right? And I actually won in fifth grade as well. But in the fourth grade, I'd gotten third place. And I remember being so scared to tell my parents that I didn't win the whole thing, that I got third place. I remember being so nervous that I actually ended up lying and saying that I did win because I was so scared. And I ended up getting in trouble for lying. So just for context.
How did they find out? Did they finally find out that you're like, oh, you
I think they just knew. I was not a very good liar. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure my mom just called the school to confirm.
So basically it just kept going, like this competitiveness really. And I'm seeing that themes a lot with with many of the women that have come on. There's a spirit of competitiveness in us that helps, that really fuels that drive sometimes. When you moved away from home, did that drive just continue? Did it ease up a little bit or...
Ooh, good question. So I remember that drive, the same kind of pressure, same kind of drive when I was in college. Even before going to college, it's like the standard like story of like, they want you to be a doctor or a lawyer. But I didn't want to be either of those things. So together we decided on my major, which would be pre-business at the time. But it wasn't for me. And I remember I had shifted into a journalism, which is what I ended up getting my degree in. But even that whole time, it was like, well, what are you going to do with that? What are you going to do with that? And I feel like I had to answer that question all throughout the rest of college until I got my first job. And thankfully, within a couple months of graduating, I got my first role at NBC, and I think they started to ease up a little bit. And that's when I had moved out entirely into New York City as well. But so I think the pressure did ease up a little bit, but I think the conditioning was already there.
Yeah, it's already set in. But I'm sure they were proud. They were like, oh my gosh, my daughter's at NBC. She's doing well.
They did. But I think even then they were like, okay, well, what's next? Where are you going to go from here? So I think that really influenced the steps that I took from then on. And I remember when I would deliberate over what my next sort of like role would be, I would consider how they would feel about it. I remember at one point I was at a crossroads. When I first started, I was in operations and I had moved into a sales role and I was in a planning role. And then I was at a crossroads where I needed to decide whether I wanted to be a salesperson or if I wanted to go into planning management. And I remember one of the considerations was that if I went the sales route, I might have been stuck at like the same level for a bit longer versus if I had gone the planning route, I saw sort of, all like a roadmap that included elevated titles. And that played a part. And thankfully it was the right move for me. I thrived in that role for a while. But I remember still thinking about like my parents' approval of my career decisions. Yeah. And so that really drove a lot of my decisions for quite a while until I was in that planning management role at a VP level. And I remember sort of just doing some soul searching, being like, I don't know that I want the next role from here. So what do I do? And that's when things really shifted for me, because I think I started to really assess, like, what do I want for me? Like, what do I want my days to look like? What kind of role do I want to wake up for? And that's when I was able to identify that I loved the people management part of my role, and I really loved problem solving. So if there was a kind of role where I could consult with different teams, that's what I was hoping for. And as luck and divine alignment would have it, a new role had opened up where it was exactly that. It was a role that fell under HR, but it would be focused on upskilling our teams on business and industry knowledge and trends. And it was exactly what I was hoping for. And that sort of is what led me to the role I have now. So I'm thankful that even from all of that conditioning and all of the external considerations and pressure, that I was still able to find what worked for me.
It's hard to sort of find that line because as a parent, I try to look for this line, right? Where conditioning to a degree is actually really good for you, for children to a degree, right? But I'm like, I'm grateful for that experience, but at the same time, I don't know, like, would it produce the same results? Maybe it would have, maybe it wouldn't have, but I definitely look back sometimes, and I'm sure you do, where you're like, I wish this had been done differently. I wish this had been approached differently in a more healthier, sustainable way.
For sure. I did do a lot of that. I did do a lot of, oh, I wish this was different, or if only this hadn't happened. But I think I'm at a place where I am really, truly so grateful for how everything has unfolded in my journey, because it has led me to exactly where I am now. And I'm able to speak from a place of all of that experience. And so many people resonate. And also that's what, like, those are the lessons that I learned that do inform my parenting now. Like, I know the things that I don't want to do. I focus so much more on regulation now, so much more, like, I put way more weight on kindness than I do on, academic performance. And it's so funny because I told that spelling bee story, but when my older child was around the same age, he had written a pretend menu, and almost every word was spelled incorrectly, except for I think pizza was the only one that was spelled correctly. And I remember thinking, I was like, this is intergenerational healing, that I don't care that all of these are spelled wrong, because he's won awards in kindness, and I am so proud.
Yeah, I love that story. That's hilarious. Pizza. Of course it's pizza, right?
Of course it's pizza. But it was so adorable. We actually have it taped up.
You do?
Yes.
That's so creative, though, that he's like, here's a menu. I want to talk a little bit about how you had made switches from different areas at work, right? So you've gone from sales, operations, planning operations, besides kind of looking at the next step of like, okay, this is going to take me here. That's not going to take me anywhere. It sounded like you were really asking long-term, what does this look like? Were you asking yourself whether you'd enjoy the day-to-day, or whether this would be fulfilling for you, or whether this matched with your skills? Or was it just like, yeah, I think this could do well for the next 5 to 10 years as far as career steps?
I think I was really thinking long-term. I had done a vision exercise at the time when I wasn't sure what was next for me. I fast forwarded in my mind and in my body on what I wanted my days to look like, what kind of impact did I want to have. And like, how did I want to spend my days? And yeah, like, and I just knew that managing my teams and developing my teams was the thing that felt the best for me. Just all of the individual impact that I had made on folks on my team and like surrounding teams and mentorship. That's what had mattered the most to me. And I wanted more of that. And now fast forward, 4 or 5 years, I get to lead our like talent development initiatives and our employee experience initiatives. And I am truly focused on culture. And yeah, it's for sure divine alignment.
I know what you do on a day-to-day from, the NBC side is a lot of culture build and talent build, but you also do that outside of your professional pursuits, right? I mean, you're involved in nonprofits, you're involved in the community. How does that talent impact others outside of your work?
Thank you for asking. This is what I'm most passionate about. Yes, so I became involved with Full Excellence actually first as a mentor. I'd mentioned that is the kind of work that brings me the most joy and purpose. And I'd first joined as a mentor to the person who would then become the president. And when she became president, I actually ended up joining the board to lead the next iteration of the mentorship program, and then eventually becoming president. And their mission is something that really speaks to me. It's all about empowerment and healing at like a collective level. And we bring empowerment workshops to the community. We do community-based research to help people feel seen, talking about mental health and other things that are typically, quite taboo for the community.
Yeah.
As you know. And I feel like sometimes when I talk about it, I'm like, I do the same thing both at work and in my community where, we're bringing development opportunities to help people thrive and live their best lives.
That sounds like alignment.
It is alignment.
Yeah. I love that. When you are working with, the mentees or the organization or, through these empowerment workshops, how does your outlook in sort of what you were taught growing up or what you had lived growing up affect how you connect with the next generation? Because there are some sort of, if you look at a Venn diagram, there are some similarities there. Not really much has changed in the last 20 years, but at the same time, a lot has changed in the last 20 years. 25, 30, I'm not going to.
Sure. I love this question. The thing I love about having gone through all of the things, including all of the challenges and all of the pressures, is that so many people relate to it. And the difference is that we're talking about it now. And I feel like people are coming to the realizations a lot sooner that there is a power within us that sometimes needs to be uncovered because it's buried under so much of the conditioning and the external pressures and validation and just all of the limiting beliefs that have built up over time.
I was going to ask, what is a consistent limiting belief that you hear?
Myself?
Just in general.
Oh.
From yourself or from the folks that you mentor and lead?
Oh my gosh. Oftentimes, it's that people don't feel enough, whether it's experienced enough, strong enough. There are just so many, or like especially in our community, in so many conversations that I've witnessed, a lot of folks have the imposter syndrome of not feeling like they belong in the room. And oftentimes it's because they don't see people like that look like them in those rooms.
Mm-hmm.
And they just don't feel enough. Even though there's so many folks that I talk to who are so talented and they have so much to bring to the table, but you can feel that they just have this conditioning that makes them
They
feel,
hold back.
that hold them back, especially women too. So like as
Yeah.
women of color, it's just, and it's a built-in challenge that we all have to overcome.
And that's hard to reconcile when you have that driven personality, but you're also battling imposter syndrome of not feeling enough. But at the same time, deep down, you're like, no, I know I could do this.
I know. And weirdly, I actually don't think that I felt like I didn't belong in the room or that I couldn't achieve the thing. But oftentimes I felt like I couldn't achieve the thing as myself, as my true self. And actually, I'm shocked
100%.
we've gotten this long in the conversation without me mentioning, but I actually have ADHD. I was late diagnosed when I was 25. So that in itself contributed to a lot of, when I was growing up, that was a lot of overthinking and perfectionism and overwhelm that showed up a little bit like drive, but was really a lot of dysregulation that came from my neurodivergence. And I mention it now because one of the characteristics of having ADHD is that you become quite good at mirroring and masking. And so,
especially for women.
Yeah. And I became really good at it in the workplace. And I feel like this answers one of your earlier questions of, in some ways, the challenges like helped us. In some ways, some of the conditioning might have been, to our benefit. And I think that is one of the things that...
Or it produced good results, right? And I think that's that is a pattern that I've seen slowly change throughout time, is that the results that were being produced from a way of doing things are now sort of being questioned, right? Should it be that way?
Right. And that's the thing. And that is the work that I've been doing in the last couple of years of like, great, I got here. This is cool. I like it here. But is this sustainable? It started when my health started to change. I felt like I was having some health challenges. I went to like an annual physical and my hormone levels were off. And I started feeling it in my body too. And I was talking to a friend who pretty much pointed out that I was dysregulated all the time, which I hadn't even recognized, that I was in a state of fight or flight most days, and had introduced me to some regulation practices, just simple like breath work, meditation. And I realized that that was what was missing from my like healing journey, growth journey, was building capacity. I was pushing my capacity so often. And I think a lot of women do this because a lot of us have multiple roles of, in our careers and as parents, as mothers. And I feel like we think that it's just how it is and that that this is how it's going to be. But I have since learned that you don't have to push past your limits, that you can put yourself first, that we are ideally listening to our bodies and noticing when our shoulders are tense or when our jaws are clenched. I can see, for the listeners, Rona is adjusting her shoulders. But
as you said that, I'm like, oh my gosh, I do that. And, I ignore it sometimes. And I just, and it's not till like hours later when you're like, why does my upper back hurt?
Exactly. And I noticed that my shoulders were always tense, that my jaw was often clenched, that my legs were crossed in a way where I'm just, Yeah. And I realized that that's not sustainable. And I started to maybe redefine what I considered to be success. And that's when, the source of my drive started to shift even more. But I remember making a list in my notes app, another favorite app on my phone. I love a list, but I had made a
Google
list.
Maps and notes.
What would I do without them? But I remember writing like what I thought success was. And it was like salary, promotions, recognition, and what success is now. And it's like a clear mind, capacity, a softer life, love all around, sustainable life. And that's when it started to shift for me. You can still have all the things that mean a lot to you. Like I still really, truly value my career, my work outside of my corporate role. And I'm driven for sure to succeed and perform in all of those areas, but in a more sustainable way now.
Yeah, I mean, you said something that has really stuck with me. It's you when you're not able to show up as who you are versus when you're able to show up as who you are and still succeed and be driven. It's like a whole different thing. It's a whole different world, right?
It is. And it's what I hope for everyone
How
to remember
can
who they are.
how can someone tell the difference between burnout and alignment? Because I feel like we've been kind of dancing around this topic, but I'm just going to ask you directly for how can somebody tell that they're burnt out or they're just misaligned?
That's a good question. I'd say burnout can be eased by rest and regulation and time. Like if after you've rested and you've regulated and you've taken some time away from the thing and you come back re-energized or at least with a little bit more capacity to go back into the thing, I'd say that's burnout. But if you do all of those things and you come back and it still is not something that if you're still repelled by the thing, then it's likely misalignment.
It's misalignment.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know you had mentioned that drive now looks very differently for you. Not drive necessarily, but success, because you're still performing, you still have drive, you're still impacting really, really many, many lives that you're leading at work, at nonprofits, in the community. If you could redefine drive for smart driven women today, what would it include? What does that look like?
I'd say the capacity building, for sure. I feel like, okay, what I've learned is that real like growth and healing and true expansion needs three things: awareness, capacity, and skills. So awareness is understanding your patterns. Capacity is what your nervous system can actually hold. And skills are the tools that you use. And if you skip capacity, even the best skills will eventually burn out. And I've realized this myself because and we're taught this like school, all about awareness, therapy, a lot of awareness. And then skills. That's literally my focus at work is building skills, right? And now also building capacity, which is great. But, but when you're only focused on awareness and skills, which most people are, then it's just not sustainable. That's why like I can have all of the awareness and all of the skills, but I still can't email people back. It still takes me 3 days to text somebody back because I don't have the capacity. Or when I'm at home parenting after a really long day where I feel sometimes like I'm going to explode and I need to, and I found that regulation practices have really made a difference in all aspects of my life. I'm able to show up with a lot more presence. I'm able to meet challenges head on, and I'm able to parent my children in a way that, I needed when I was younger.
Yeah.
All from building capacity.
Inner healing.
Inner healing.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that with us. Audrey, I can't believe our time is almost up because I could go on forever chatting with you on so many different topics, especially around this. I would love it if you could leave us with one final advice for all of our listeners that could be helpful, practical, and applicable after they listen to this podcast.
Sure. So I feel like there's advice out there that says, do it scared, do it anyway, you know?
Yeah.
But what if, I'd like to offer a little reframe. What if you did it regulated? What if you did it with capacity? What if you did it excited? One of my favorite fun facts is that your brain doesn't know the difference between fear and excitement because it shows up quite similarly, right? Like the sweaty palms, the heightened heart rate, and the shortness of breath. And what defines it is the story that you attach to it. And so the only reason that it knows it's fear is because that's what you call it. That's what you've identified it as. And that really can shift your experience if you were to just reframe that, right? So the next time that you feel scared, I'd say, what if you told yourself that you were excited instead? Because your brain will believe anything that you tell it. So instead of telling yourself, you know, like, I'm tired, I can't do this, or we could say, I'm really excited. I can't wait to do this. It's all about mindset.
Thank you for that wisdom. Thank you for your time. And gosh, for so many insights that I hope everyone listening in this podcast really takes to heart and attempts to apply them in their following week, following month.
Thank you, Audrey. Thank you for having me.